so you spoke recently about bombs being put around. I mean, so what do you think could be the possible end game? Now that we've kind of spoken about it a little bit, what do you think could be the possible end game?
Yeah, there is that problem. I totally stand by that. I haven't been able to produce evidence because it was just, had to say that, that we had to only deal with that subject in a highly shortened, but that's a tremendous worry, and it's a tremendous story. And men in the senior positions of intelligence organizations have been assassinated, literally, because they found out about this, right? I'll be going into all of this. But yeah, the dirty bombs has been put in here since about the 80s, systematically put in places in the West. And I look to this time right now as one of the things that collaterally could be happening is that they've been discovered, and that communism in general, whether it's the Islamo-communism manifestation, Chinese communism, and all of its other derivative ones, like, because communists are ensconced now in all of the different agencies of the West. This doesn't just mean the World Health Organization, that's pretty high up, but down the ladder, up the ladder. And so we must strike against it. In some way, we have to get rid of this pestilence because it's eating away at the Western structures, and it's manifold. So in that conversation, I was only able to talk about the Islamo-communism aspect of it, and these dirty bombs, right? And the professors who've done it, and the funding that came even from Putin and other people. Like, that's a credible story. We're going to be going into it on Slave in Great Depth. But there's also other branches of this communistic, aspect. Hillary Clinton is a dyed-in-the-flesh communist. Just because they happen to be super wealthy and living in the West doesn't mean that they're doesn't mean they're capitalists themselves or in favor of capitalism. Quite the reverse. So when she got a bloody nose when Mr. Trump got in, that lit the fuse, that the blue touch paper, so to speak. Not just that, but that was huge. And they're recriminating against him. Obama didn't like being ousted. Hillary Clinton didn't like being ousted, right? So that group that they control, and it is powerful, obviously, has tried to, they're irrational. They're probably even psychotic. And so their, reprisals were on the agenda. And this is one of them, right? Then China, we don't need to go into that, right? But what I was trying to emphasize in my work is that take all of these bloody noses, the one that he put tariffs on China as well, and he's done several other things in the name of the West, and that's all very good. And of course, these psychotics will want to reprise. That should be axiomatic. But what I tried to do in my work was take it back to the way that this man even got in the first place in 16 and before, right? Where did he come from, right? And my only theory is that he's a paleo-conservative, and he was thrown up by the paleo-conservatives, who now they're not the deep state, but they're the deep right. Let's just put it that way, right? And this deep right has started to mobilize itself. And the reason why they mobilize themselves, and this is again speculation, but it is based on wide reading. And the reason why they're mobilizing themselves is because they realize that communism is mobilizing itself, right? And this is all behind the scenes. Not only in the form of radical Islam, but in other forms as well, probably in China. They know this through their intelligence agents who warn them ahead of time. And so Mr. Trump got in because of that intelligence that came to the fore. He gets in because that group of people, the deep right, want a man to be in the seat of power when, right, all the things that are going to happen that their intelligence is telling them. So they knew that what it really means is that they knew about 5-6 years ago, if not more, and they mobilized then. And Donald Trump is the first physical result of it. The first, he comes onto the world stage, and myself, I took that as like, there's more to this, the more to the getting rid of the Democrats. It's probably, and I was hoping it would be a small domino effect, a small effect that would create a domino effect that leads to pretty much where we are now. So despite all of the furore, all the histrionics in the streets and people's fear, I have been also sort of aware that this might be the final mobilization of the deep right. Now that causes another reaction on the other side with the deep left, right? Because one is reading the other and one is spying on the other. There's spies deeply ensconced within different groups. So the left realize what's happening, and the right, because they're seeing what's taking place. So they're prompted to do something, and do something irrational. And this could be that, right? If they did get a bloody nose in the meantime from the discovery of these weapons, that's even more. Now they get a bloody nose again. Well, say you got Hillary not getting in, right? You got the seizure of these weapons, or at least the discovery of where they are. You've got tariffs, right? You've got other strictures that the presidency is bringing down. Can't think of them anymore right now, but there have been several. And then you've got this reaction from the left in Bolshevik communism, right? In Bolshevik China. Now, all reactions often are, by the very definition that they're reactions, incompetent. They're not really that planned. So if some loon, right, up there, who's already probably even in his dotage, let alone senile, pulled the handle, and pressed the red switch to start this, this mobilization, well, it didn't really work, thank goodness, right? And the most communist of the countries, the most socialist of the countries, was the last to act. Britain, Sweden, anybody remember them, right? They're the last to act, yeah, because these are the most socialistic, died in the flesh countries that any shutting of the borders or any action would have been against China. Well, we're not against China, says Canada and Britain and Sweden, because we're communists, we're like them. So we don't act so that people will know, oh yeah, China's an enemy that's attacked us. So what I'm telling you has, verifiable proof. The last countries to act against this thing are the most socialistic on the planet. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to work that out, because again, they're so in the pocket, right, of world communism that they won't even save their own people by reacting, because that's going to be considered racist. And the media all got behind that. But I'm looking at it going, yeah. So I'm just hoping now that there'll be even further mobilization, up to the point of even the installation of martial law. I think people think that's crazy, but that's because you don't know the enemy and how powerful they are and what they do to us in retaliation, and probably what they've already done. A couple of people died in 9/11. People who get horrified by that. And we went to war over that. That's nothing compared to the deaths of innocent men and women today. How people are not irate and screaming about that is beyond belief, But again, I'm just hoping that yesterday, Mr. Trump declared that he was, ceasing funding for the World Health Organization. That's an extremely elite, an extremely high-placed, organization, and it's a great sign. It's still half that needs to be done, but it is a good sign that he means business. And I'm just hoping every single day that, there'll be more mobilization against China and the world communism. And if there is, you're going to soon see that, my goodness, finally we're able to, get rid of a poison that has been entering into the schools, that's been entering into the media, this political correctness that's infecting every state in America, where they're unleashing hordes of prisoners, dangerous felons. They are making cities safe cities for a horde of very, very dangerous people, and all of these lunatic things that have happened in the world. Right? We'll start to see the cleanup. He said about draining the swamp. This is the real draining of the swamp. The swamp is communism, and that's the one that needs to be drained. And I just keep hoping that every day when I wake up, that this is exactly what is happening. And it's my duty to then inform the audience whether they accept it or not. Is their business. Not everybody knows that communism is a threat. Everyone thinks communism died away years ago. Nothing could be further from the truth. It just hybridized, but it hybridized in things that are very, very, vile. And look at the state of Canada. So, I'm looking to the ending of that so that we can actually get back to some traditional structures finally, which are Western based.
My goodness. Well, I guess we just have to wait and see what the end game's going to be. And let's just hope it's for the best of humanity. Because even a few weeks ago, I wasn't online so much. I was kind of feeling like, my goodness, what is really happening here? And I was getting these different stories. I was thinking, really, is there a place for shadow work? Am I wasting my time now? It just seems so insignificant compared to what's actually happening out there. But the last week especially, I just thought, well, you know what, everyone's home now, so this is probably the best time for us to start introspecting. The other thing is that being at home, we're with our families, problems come up, and we're kind of able to see ourselves through our families and our partners and stuff like that. So this is probably a very good time to start introspecting before hopefully we see some huge, much better change in the world that's much needed right now for us. Yeah, and shadow work is all about this. Shadow work, as I said, is calling the false the false. And there's other astrological things that are doing exactly that, but in a very ramped up way. So it does make things very sensitive because it breaks the monotony, it breaks the cycle of mediocrity that everybody's caught in, and forces them back on the existential issues. This is all shadow work taking place right now. And again, communism as a paradigm is over, right? And so it needs to be over, and it needs somebody to give it a push. Back in 14, 15, 16, all that histrionics of the snowflakes in the streets and all these causes and crusades, that's also something that the left initiated while they're folding up, while they're packing up their bags and, and stuffing cash into their pockets and trying to exit to wherever they're going to exit. Often they create a few fires down below, right? And when I saw all these incendiary, anarchistic types running the streets, I took that as a sign that upstairs, a lot of packing noises are being heard, right?
And I've been expecting that for years. I did a podcast called The Dying Conspiracy where we touched on this a little bit. And remember, any level of any podcasting or, you know, it can only be a very brief utterance as well, you know, because these things are vast subjects. But in short, I feel that all of that histrionics and unleashing, you know, of mayhem in the streets, and anybody who's lived in Los Angeles will know exactly that's what it is, right? The nihilists and the anarchists have been very much released, right? So why though? Is because while the fires are burning downstairs, right? The elites who've created world chaos, and they are addicts of world chaos, they are the architects of world chaos, they're packing up to get out. That's what's really happening. So when you hear these monkeys and this movement talk about the global elite is finished, global elite, can you use any less vague a term? Try communist elite. See, because these are leftists themselves trying to throw dust. Like you said, it's very complicated. Well, this movement is now jam-packed full of pinkos, socialists, and outright communists. And they've been mobilized to throw disinformation out on the internet. So they use vague terms like global elite is coming down, global elite, this and that, and other ones as well. And it means nothing. They're actually anti the group that I'm talking about, right? The deep rich, the deep right. That group is mobilizing now, and it's for the good of the West. Finally, which they'd mobilized years ago. But the other side now mobilizes with the help of the complicit media to keep on demonizing this group. And they've already broken our morale through Facebook and through other groups. You know, they've broken normal Western people's morale about the structures of the West until we see them as nothing but evil. And they wanted that. That's the drip feed system for years. Doesn't mean I'm an advocate of everything in the West. I see that. I've studied the, you know, aberrations of the Western way for years, and I've been speaking on it right down into the deep psychology that nobody else has followed me down there. Nobody else wants to talk about any of these things, right? But they pertain, don't they? Everything tracks back to the psychology, doesn't it? But what the hell? And there's not a single person out there, you know, in this movement who should be talking about it, who is. So, you know, there you have that. But there's mobilizations on both sides. And so that thugocracy being unleashed into the streets told me that there's trouble upstairs. And the few of the last hardcore Bolsheviks, most who do live in actual China, by the way, there's an interesting part, but they've got their counterparts in, you know, in South Korea and places like that. So this is the last ditch attempt. And then when they found that their paradigm is busted and that, you know, it's time to end, being psychotic, they say, okay, I'll go, but not without taking as many of the enemy with me as I can. And also not, you know, the people even in my own country who've never really wholly signed on. I don't care how many of you die. And so this is the pulling of the lever, you know, while the capsule, you know, leaves the sinking ship. This is how I read this. You know, but further action needs to be taken against them. There definitely should be reparations. There should be a lot more than reparations. You know, there should be absolute attack on China. And that'll take out the headquarters of the world, you know, conspiracy, the real one, not the global elite, the real communist elite, the word they all can't use, right? And that will take it out. And then all the other subsidiary little groups, you see, will of themselves fizzle and fade and turn coat. And this is what we need. It's far beyond time that we need this, actually. So I've never looked at any of the stuff that's happening now with an ounce of panic. You know, to me, I just pray every day that it's going to be this. And, you know, sacrifices are there and for, you know, justifiable in that regard.